Well, those were the only good posts this month.
Oh my god. Go away. We're drinking.
I'm not drinking. I'm drinking Canada Dry.
Welcome to Maester Monthly, your favorite pseudo-monthly podcast hosted by the moderators of the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit. Before we begin, this podcast is spoilers extended, which means that material from The Winds of Winter and all aired episodes of Game of Thrones are fair game. You have been warned. My name is Michael, also known as Bookshelf Stud.
And my name is Eliana, also known as Glass Table Girl.
And my name is Matt, also known as Joe Magician.
For those of you on YouTube, you may notice the video looks a little different, a little more rustic and simple. Because editing these videos is a hell of a lot of effort, and Maester Monthly is not a full-time job, we are streamlining. The editing process is changing. You should see regularly occurring subreddit highlight episodes like this one, interspersed with some big special episodes featuring beautiful, high-quality guests from the Aswaf community. And as always, your favorite moderators, all 30 billion of us, will be rotating in and out from episode to episode, so good luck recognizing all of our voices. Oh, and as part of simplifying the editing, we are not going to bother with the clean tag on iTunes anymore. That's right. We can all say,
Fuck!
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 Fuck,
Fuckity,
yes.
fuckity, fuck.
Shit.
Now that's overkill. Oh, yeah. We could do the whole George Carlin words you can't say on TV skit now.
Ooh.
Or we could read aloud the Aswaf novels.
Or we could read Danny's sex scenes. We should do that.
Oh my. I mean, we've talked about some fairly bad things, though, you know, like, and still kept the quote-unquote clean tag on iTunes.
We've been skirting that line for a while, everyone, so we've just decided to stop pretending that we weren't talking about bestiality.
Yeah, I mean...
And
yeah,
the streak continues.
There's just as much bestiality, if not more. So as always, before we get into the subreddit highlights, I wanted to kick it off with an introduction question, and this week's is actually kind of a subreddit highlight. This is posted by user Aria1100 back in March of 2018, so kind of a throwback. But Aria1100 asks, which character or characters are you glad never had a point of view chapter? So which characters in the story are you glad, like, we're not in their heads at all? For whatever reason.
Two characters that I'm very glad that we never had a point of view chapter for. One of them is Bowen Marsh. While I think he's an interesting character, I think that having his point of view would have, like, obviously reduced some of that dramatic tension between everyone stabbing Jon. And also, he's a character that I think works best not knowing, right? The other one is Jorah Mormont, because...
Yes.
I mean, let's be real. Jorah Mormont in the books is, like, the fucking worst. And... God.
Yeah,
So,
we probably don't
those
want to
two.
be, like, seeing through Jorah's eyes while he's hanging out with Dany.
That's fair. I feel like it'd be very disappointing to see in both their heads. Just like, I don't need to see that. I'm good. Not even from, like, a narrative perspective. Like, I don't want to see their thoughts.
Yeah, I think Bowen's could be interesting, but from a narrative perspective and, like, how the story's structured, I'm glad we didn't.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree. Matt, what about you?
I have a class of characters. This overall group is, I'm glad we do not have a POV from anybody that actually really knew Rhaegar well. Because that is such an integral part of A Song of Ice and Fire with RLJ and Robert's Rebellion and how that started and what his real motivations were. But when you look at characters like Arthur Dayne or Maester Aemon, or like even like someone like Aerys maybe, or Eliana, I think it's going to be very disappointing when we find out what Rhaegar was actually doing. And I think it creates a lot of very interesting mystery that people keep talking about. The fact that it's like, is he a bit of a dumbass? Was he like a genius that saw so far in advance? It creates a lot more interesting storytelling elements than if we just had someone be like, oh, yeah, Rhaegar was just like really into Lyanna. Like he wasn't thinking any of this out. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
I love that answer.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, that's a great answer, and it's funny that we get like Barristan and Jon Con, but Barristan didn't know him that well, and Jon Con, it seems, may have been like excluded a little bit from Rhaegar's inner circle, even though he sort of felt like he was there. For Sopranos fans, maybe he was like the Artie Bucco to the Familia of lieutenants.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say Connington feels like he's the inner circle, but he's not. And the same for Barristan. Barristan's like, oh, me and Rhaegar used to go, and he would sing and like get coins and stuff, and he had fun with the common people, and that's like a really great story. But when we're talking about like what actually motivated Rhaegar to run away with Lyanna and leave Elia and all these other crazy things, neither of these characters really have any idea what he was doing.
Yeah, I think that's such a great answer because it also points out this really, it's in some ways it characterizes Rhaegar on this like meta level, right? Because there were so few characters who were close to him, and a lot of them passed away. That also gives you an idea of like Rhaegar was not the kind of person who is easily, everyone knows who Robert Baratheon is. Like,
yeah,
he has a personality that telegraphs itself from afar. Everyone knows what kind of person he is, but also that Rhaegar just didn't have any keep many close friends, and I think that. I like that answer a lot.
I think the best part of that is when Barristan tells a story. He's like, and then Rhaegar saw something in his books, and then he became a knight. It's like, that tells you right there that Barristan did not understand Rhaegar at all. That like he never even like asked him like, hey man, why'd you go from being a nerd to like trying to be like me? Like what happened there? That's a conversation he probably should have had if they were really friends.
That's a good point. Yeah. So for my answer, I have to go with Robb. As my main answer, I mean, there's lots of...
Wait, Robb Stark or Robb
Stark.
Baratheon?
Robb with two B's. Robb. Okay. Because as much as I like Robb, I like that the thing that made the first couple books different from other fantasy books for me was that they were, like, Robb's story is actually mostly about Catelyn. And that's kind of what I try to sell Aswath to people as, is like, oh, like it's got these like young boy kings doing war and stuff, but for the first couple books, the boy king's mom is the main point of view, and it's a very different kind of story. And I know Gurm has said that he thought maybe Robb should have had a point of view, and he's gone back and forth on that, and I'm sure it would be cool, and there's some moments that might have been good with Robb's point of view, but I don't know. I like the story we got, I guess. I heard Eliana recoil a little bit, though.
Only a little. Yeah, I just disagree.
Oh. Just flat out.
Disagree.
It's the Thunderdome.
I mean, no. Don't get me wrong. I think that having the Catelyn chapters is genius, and I love that. I just also wanted Robb chapters because I think there's some interesting stuff there in terms of the decisions he has to make, as well as, and this is a little off-brand for me, but I'm going to say it, more information on Robb as a skin changer. And I think that there's merit to it being left ambiguous, but I do think that he was one.
Right.
Obviously.
Oh, he definitely was one.
And more consciously so than like probably a little bit less consciously so and less adept than Bran.
Yeah.
But more consciously so than Jon.
Interesting. Yeah, I could see that. I think where he could have used a few chapters maybe is starting in book 3, maybe picking up with him like marrying Jane Westerling, and then we get some of him like
I think picking up with the Crag,
and then maybe we can get some of the skin changing stuff as he's building up to the Red Wedding and that death. Because that's where he makes a lot of his most interesting choices, I think, is like marrying Jane and the fallout from that and executing the Karstarks.
Exactly. And I think that this is obviously debatable, but I think that the way he makes some of his decisions and then the way he justifies it, etc., would have been like a good foil to Jon's chapters. And of course, we already have Rob's actions and can therefore compare it to the actions that Jon takes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because they both, for obvious reasons, are so strongly influenced by Ned and are trying to live up to his legacy because they thought he was such a good father. But I would have valued that.
I think I agree with Michael that I'm glad we didn't really get it, because I think there's of the 3 adult Stark kids, Jon, Theon, and Robb. I mean, Theon's an honorary Stark in this situation. I think George picked the more interesting of the 2 arcs to follow from the inside. Like, I don't hate me. I don't think Robb is that, like, he's not that interesting of a person on the inside. Like, Jon has a ton of conflict in him and rage and passion built up from the fact that he's a 14-year-old who feels like neglected. The same for Theon, who clearly wants to go back to the Iron Islands and has like this death sentence looming over him. Robb's just kind of like a dude. Like, everything's going right for Robb until it doesn't. Maybe if you pick up right when things start going wrong for him. But I think for most of his arc, I don't think there have been particularly much added versus Catelyn. Catelyn's probably the more interesting way to look at him.
I mean, things start going wrong for him, and I would assert in, like, a Game of Thrones, in a Clash of Kings, when your dad dies and you're the man of the house and lord/king now.
I would say specifically when he at the crag. If you want to pick up there, I think that's a really good place to pick up. But I don't know. He's just like, he feels like another lordling, basically. The skin changing stuff is good too. But
I think
yeah.
I wonder if what happened was that Gurm started to write Robb a little more interesting, like started to get into Robb's head a little more, and then kind of regretted like not making him a point of view because he was starting to get more interesting. Because I can see that. I can see the argument that, like, in the maybe in Clash even, that since a lot of his story in that book is like him winning battles and stuff, you can write in conflict there, but I don't know if it was as needed. But
I think you're exactly spot on with that. That George made him more interesting later, and I actually think the Samwell and Jon chapters, the matching ones in A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons, are maybe like his attempt at doing that. Like, this what it would have looked like inside Robb's head, because you see Jon from the inside and the outside in a similar role. So maybe you just did it later.
It would be really funny to get like a Gurm retcon where he rewrites the entire series from a different set of points of view. Like that would be really awesome.
Don't give him ideas.
I think that's the place where I first read that George R. R. Martin had considered making Robb a POV was Vanity Fair, right? Or EW, one of those. And I think there's one reason that I would have disliked it if this would have been his motivation, because like they ended with the joke of George wanted to make Robb a POV because it would have made it less telegraphed that Robb was going to die or something, he said. Or I don't know if he said it or if that's an editorialization on EW/Vanity Fair's part. I don't remember which publication was.
Sure.
And I don't like that reason. I don't think that's a worthy reason to make him a POV. If it was just because, I wanted it to be more unexpected. George R. R. Martin doesn't talk that way. I don't have the George voice.
I wanted to make Robb. Yeah, no.
None of us can do it.
But I found the article you were talking about. Yeah, and he says, if I had to do it over again, I would make Robb a point of view character right from the beginning. And because he did not, Vanity Fair writes, Martin thinks readers were able to foretell Robb's destiny, and if there is one thing Martin hates to do in his books, it is give readers clues. So yeah, it was like this, like, I don't want to. Maybe I gave them too much information, and so I should make Robb a point of view character so he seems like he's not going to die.
I feel like he overestimates us sometimes. Like, I didn't see that coming. Maybe I'm a dumb reader. Maybe I was just, like, along for the ride, but I didn't see his death coming.
I don't think most people did. I don't know. I wasn't around back then. Crafting theories about Jon and Catelyn getting together.
Ooh, that's right. Good throwback.
Throwback.
Yeah.
Throwbacks.
So, moving along to our subreddit highlights for this episode. Eliana, do you want to get us started with one of your favorite posts from the last few months?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about, because I love Ned Stark very much and I still miss him constantly. Every time you start to reread it again, you're like, oh damn, I miss Ned. User Peroshen has a thread called Ned's Final Instruction, and it's very short, so I'm just going to read this aloud. Ned says to Catelyn, "Once you are home, send word to Helman Tallheart and Galbert Glover under my seal. They are to raise 100 bowmen each and fortify Moat Cailin. 200 determined archers can hold the neck against an army. Instruct Lord Manderley that he is to strengthen and repair all his defenses at White Harbor, and see that they are well manned, and from this day on I want a careful watch kept over Theon Greyjoy. If there is war, we shall have sore need of his father's fleet." That's from Eddard IV, A Game of Thrones. And Parishon says, "On rereads, this paragraph always gets me. It's sad because these men proved to be stark loyalists, and ironically, during Robb's reign, the Northmen lost Moat Cailin, ignored Wyman Manderley's offer to build a fleet, and then let Theon go, which caused so much tragedy. The first time I read that paragraph, I had no idea how important Ned's final instruction would be."
Snaps. Snaps for Ned.
Snaps for Ned. Oh my god.
It's true, we do miss Ned, don't we? Just
Yeah, like every day.
Yeah, I think about it a lot.
I was actually just thinking about it yesterday, to be honest.
Really?
Just like, I don't know, a shower thought or something. I'm like, damn, I miss Ned.
Well, when he comes back and wins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a pigeon. Or ice.
When Catelyn finds his bones and reanimates him using the power of R'hllor, then we'll have him back again. It'll be great.
That's what we're discussing now. We're not discussing the post. We're discussing this crazy bullshit Matt just said. This is a hashtag nice catch, right? Because, yeah, specifically everything Ned planned to do just totally went up in smoke.
It didn't actually. So Catelyn did send out the orders, and they fortified Moat Cailin. They still failed, and let me find it. Someone down here makes a good point that it failed because they were expecting people to come from the south. They fortified Moat Cailin to defend the north from the south, but the Ironborn came in from the north. And it was also a group that they weren't necessarily, at that point, necessarily really thinking we're going to turn on them because Theon Greyjoy.
Yeah, it's interesting how in this set of orders, Ned is really thinking about, you can tell he's thinking about defending the entry points to the north. It's the neck, but it's also the sea. It's also, okay, we need a fleet on the west coast and a fleet on the east coast. We need, he's planning ahead in a very grand strategy kind of way. Like if this was a game of, I don't know, Crusader Kings
Thrones?
or Civs or something. A game of what?
Thrones?
Oh my god!
like Crusader Kings of
some sort of game in which there's thrones involved, yeah. But no, I don't know, he's thinking very carefully about this, okay, gotta protect the entry points to the north.
I think these are basically a set of orders that would have stopped the Greyjoy invasion entirely, but I think because of the way it got communicated that the watch over Theon part got cut out, I think it's supposed to be implied that the watch Theon means, by the way, watch for the Ironborn too. So maybe Robb, by protecting Theon as his friend, stopped the correct orders from going out. From this, I mean, if you're keeping watch over Theon and you're secure Moat Cailin, you're okay, they're coming for Moat Cailin, probably the Ironborn, be ready for that. If you just say, ready Moat Cailin for war, they're gonna be oh, from the south, duh, that's what we always do. Why would I be looking to the west? We have Theon.
But the orders were given to Catelyn.
Right, but then Robb didn't pass them all along.
But I think that Catelyn tried to carry out the orders. It's not that Robb didn't pass it along. It's that Robb was we're fine.
But he didn't pass along that one key part that they're worried about the Greyjoys betraying them.
Well, yeah. I mean, it sounds like Ned's thing with Theon was more keep an eye on Theon because we need him as leverage so Balon will, go wreck Lannisport for us. It sounds like he was predicting an active role
that could be
for the Ironborn and maybe using, a threat over Theon's life to do that.
Strengthen and repair defenses at White Harbor. Was White Harbor in bad shakes in a Game of Thrones? Was Wyman being bad at keeping his house up? Did he need to go to Home Depot or something?
I think it's just you have to muster, if you've ever played the Game of Thrones board Game of Thrones, you have to set your pieces down in certain places before you can muster forces there. And I think it's that. You all start out, you're I guess I have this amount of people, but...
White Harbor, I'm sure, is doing okay, but, people haven't invaded it in... I mean, when was the last time someone invaded White Harbor? Before the Targaryens,
hundreds of years.
Did they invade White Harbor during Robert's Rebellion?
No.
I don't
No.
think
I
so.
haven't heard of
Maybe
any
I bet the most
battles.
recent would probably be like a Skagos invasion.
It actually, I'm looking I'm looking at the wiki of Ice and Fire at this moment.
I don't think Skagos has the navy to do that.
There's this note that like it has not seen wildlings in centuries and has never been attacked by the Ironborn. And it sounds like the last time it was I'm not even sure if it's ever been attacked. That can't be right. Because the only notes around White Harbor are that the Manderleys came north, they built it, or they built it up.
It had to be attacked by the Vale and the Three Sisters because that's why it was built as a fortress against them. So they must have had battles against them.
True, yeah, but I think this was like ancient. I think we're getting back to like
Oh yeah, that was like thousands of
ye olde
years
times
ago.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm betting Skagos or the Wildlings were the last people to even try to attack it.
And the wildlings just don't have the ability to launch a naval attack. Like, I think if it were to be recent, it would have had to have been during Robert's Rebellion. But we, like, learn a lot, I feel, about quite a few of the naval battles, and because George is interested in that, just the battles in general, and we don't talk about it.
So it seems like White Harbor may have just, like, it just wasn't ready for war. It was there. It was doing okay, but it wasn't like Bravos, which is built to, like, withstand the mightiest besieging fleet in the world, right? Like it's just a city with a port.
One thing I found really interesting about this quote right here is I think a lot of times people say like Ned was a poor at strategy or he was in over his head in King's Landing and et cetera, et cetera. It's like, no, in these sentences he's like, this is the strategy for Northern defense. You need to go make this happen. And he's clearly been thinking about it. And he has a strategy in the back of his head, and he's like, how am I ever going to get this back north? No, this is in response to Catelyn coming to giving him news.
Yeah.
And then he's like, snap, got a defense strategy ready to go.
Yeah.
So maybe he's probably not the best political mind at times when you're dealing with people that are super underhanded, but clearly he's got a great strategic mind. They didn't win the war for no reason,
Agreed.
Well, and what's interesting too is that every instruction is centered around the people. And I mean, maybe I'm I'm overly fawning with Ned here because it's Ned, but his orders are to send word to Helman Tallheart and Galbert Glover and get 100 bowmen, and then get to Lord Manderley and tell him to do this, and then keep an eye on Theon Greyjoy. Like, it's the Tallheart and Glover thing in particular strikes me as like, because Ned had dinner with these guys like once every couple months, right? Like he knew them, so he was like, okay, all right, go get Helman, he's a pretty good guy, and Galbert, he would listen. Yeah, okay, get them to raise the bowmen. Like he's, he can make those kind of decisions, as opposed to a leader like Tywin, who's like, okay, who has good numbers? Okay, this random lord, I don't know who the fuck that is. Like, send him over there.
It's also interesting that Ned knows exactly how many men he needs to hold Mokaelin. He's like 200 exactly. Right. So, a very personal lord.
It's also because Ned had the experience of coming of age during one of Westeros's bloodiest wars.
True.
Like, of course he knows. He's also participated in 2 wars, so he's a veteran, and therefore he's probably not only like, did he think of this at the time? This is probably something that he's thought of in advance, because he's like, well, if something happens again, I need to be prepared, especially because he's been suspecting the Lannisters for quite a while, or any threat from the south, because it has to come from the south, because the north is the entire like large part above the Panama Canal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we tend to think of Ned as like a dad and a lord, but in his last chapter, right, he's like, I am a soldier, I will die a soldier's death. Like, he's only like 35 or whatever, and he's already a double veteran, including seeing some really traumatic shit, just like all over the. So yeah, I mean, he's definitely got that war readiness right under his pelt, right under his wolf pelt. His hackles are. I don't know. I was trying to think of a good metaphor.
It's boiled leather. Come on. One thing I'm going to go back on what I said a little bit, but I think one thing that's missing from this is he's clearly sending out instructions to the people he needs and probably the people he likes, but like there's nothing here for Roose Bolton. And in fact, he's setting an order to Roose Bolton's bannermen and not including him at all. So he's not really playing lordly politics that well with this order, but he's playing strategy much better than he is politics. Like, he should send something to Roose Bolton to go do this, but he doesn't. Roose is probably going to betray him anyway, but it probably didn't help that Ned didn't trust him at all and didn't like him and undercut him in these kind of ways, because you send something to Wyman, it probably should go to Roose first.
And I mean, Ned wasn't wrong, and
he's not wrong.
This is, in many ways, how he plays politics in King's Landing. He trusts the wrong person because, as George R.R. Martin says, like, Littlefinger is incredibly trustworthy in the books. Like, people trust him very easily. That's the way he comes off. He seems like he's your friend, as opposed to in the show where he's slimy and played by Mayor Kirketti. I still love Aidan Gillen, though.
Yes.
Anyways, it's that Ned doesn't trust other people that he doesn't know as well or feel that they'll be loyal to him.
Yeah, he should have given all his overlords something to do here, even if it wasn't important.
Maybe, but he could have been afraid, especially if you distrust Roose Bolton, that if you are silently fortifying all of your stuff, like, then it telegraphs to the rest of the realm, like, hey, what's going on here? Even though this is pointed out in a Catelyn Not a Cast episode that other people in the realm were already making moves to go to war. Not necessarily with the North, but you hear that Tywin Lannister is mustering forces. So maybe it's not the worst if everyone knows, but at the same time, I can see Ned's desire to keep that secrecy.
I do wonder how much he had his, regular staff check-ins with Roose Bolton. That's a relationship we don't know much about, which is between Eddard and Roose. It doesn't seem like it was as rich, maybe, as with his other bannermen. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Roose seems like the kind of guy who should give Ned the creeps, right?
Yeah, he gives everyone the creeps.
Yeah, exactly.
Rightly so, but at the same time, he's hugely powerful, and even if it's someone you just trust, like, I don't know. I go back and forth on this, because it's like chicken and egg. Roose was probably going to do it anyway, but did Ned make it worse by also telegraphing he doesn't like and trust him?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. Like with Renly and Stannis. But that's enough about that topic.
Oh my god, that's not well, we're coming back to that topic, I guess.
We will.
Not to give spoilers away for the episode.
Hey, this is spoilers extended.
Oh, it extends.
Fuck you, man.
I don't know what that means.
So, Matt, do you have any subreddit highlights you want to share with us?
I do, and it was more than just a subreddit highlight. I would say it's a fandom highlight.
Ooh.
Ashea from History of Westeros. What were they at, by the way? Sorry.
Worldcon.
Worldcon.
Everyone remember to nominate us for the Hugo Awards next year so that we can attend the Hugo Losers Party at Worldcon.
It's absolutely fucking shameful that we weren't nominated this year.
How could we not have been nominated for a Hugo Award?
So
we are
rude.
An acceptable choice.
We are pseudo-monthly.
But anyway, the highlight was that Ashea, or Myronese Not on Twitter from History of Westeros, she got to ask George R.R. Martin a question at Worldcon, and her question was, did Bloodraven take Dark Sister, the Valyrian steel sword of House Targaryen, to the wall with him? And George said, yes, he did. Bloodraven was, oh my god, he was allowed to leave for the wall with the only Valyrian steel sword the Targaryens still had at that time.
Gasp.
That's
damn.
That's a pretty big reveal right there.
Damn.
I think the biggest thing that this tells us is I think there's a lot of confusion around what the actual circumstances were for Bloodraven going to the wall and why he was sent there, and if it was really a punishment or anything like that. I think the fact that Egg said, yeah, you totally take Dark Sister with you, says it wasn't a punishment, that this was it was maybe more like a mission, like a directed mission, than like go to the wall and die, which is mostly what it is when you get sent to the wall.
Mm-hmm. It really makes me want the eventual probable Dunk and Egg story where Dunk is escorting Aemon and Bloodraven to the wall. I mean, I assume we're at least going to get that in flashbacks in a Dunk story. I don't know if it'll be a whole Dunk and Egg thing on its own, but like maybe the story after it happens or something. He's chatting with Egg and is like, "Hey, that was pretty weird. This conversation I had about ice spiders with Bloodraven." And Egg's like, "Yeah, he says lots of crazy stuff, doesn't he?"
Step 1, get the Dunk and Egg stories.
Yeah, this is
we already have some good ones, I guess.
This is predicated on optimism.
Actually, that's not true.
Yeah.
Step 0, get Winter.
Ooh.
Anyway, Dark Sister.
So the real question is, where is it now? There's a lot of fandom speculation about this. Do you guys have particular possibilities that you enjoyed?
First, I want to double back. Like, I'm not saying that what you're saying is wrong. I just also think that I know that there have been people who have questioned why Egg would let Bloodraven take Darksister to the wall. And in the event that it's not for the reason that you say, I think that on a character standpoint and in terms of the political situation in Westeros, for me, it makes perfect character sense for Egg to be like, yeah, fuck this sword. I don't need this sword because an entire war started over the last time that someone was given a sword, and he's gonna be like, I don't care.
Interesting.
Huh.
That's a good point, actually. I hadn't seen that suggested about like a character reason. Because yeah, the Blackfire rebellions began partially because of the symbolism of Blackfire the sword being presented to Daemon Blackfire the person.
Who named himself after a sword.
Yeah, which, when you think about it...
Brynden Darksister?
It doesn't have the same ring.
Is that like Jeff's evil twin?
I understand what you're saying, Eliana. I guess I was more speaking to... There's a lot of people that think that Bloodraven was really sent there like in the penal colony way. That like he was like, this was like him being drawn and quartered and sent to the wall in shame. It's like he can't be in that much shame if they let him keep their last Valyrian steel sword. Like, that's an important thing. Like, let's say it was Bittersteel and he had Blackfire. I don't think they send it with him.
That's true.
There's a different situation with what's going on with Bloodraven just beyond punishment that they let this happen. Because he doesn't have to. Like, he really doesn't have to.
Like being honorably discharged as opposed to dishonorably discharged is what you're saying.
That's what I'm circling around. You said it better.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, because you're right. Like, normally you don't. I mean, like, Waymar Royce has his really fancy sable cloak, you know, which obviously is so different from a fucking Valyrian steel sword that belongs to your family. But just in terms of...
But he joined up voluntarily. Bloodraven was ordered to go.
Oh, that's true. He was a volunteer. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not saying that your theory is wrong. I'm just saying that for me, it's just not unthinkable that if that were the case, like, Bloodraven would be allowed to take Darksister.
Sure, yeah.
It's just like, I don't know, fuck these swords. Like, I just dealt with like a bazillion rebellions over this. Well, not me necessarily, but like...
Yeah, his family.
Yeah, his family had to deal with so much. His family like broke apart over a sword, and...
I like that because... That would definitely be... George is super interested in the character reasons. So if there is a story about Bloodraven being sent to the wall, that seems like a really good conversation for Dunk and Egg to have with each other. Like, no, you know what? Just let him take it. Like, the realm has bled too much, you know, like that kind of thing.
Actually, in support of that, there's the quote from Egg where he's talking about Daemon Blackfire, and he said, like, well, my father said the kingdom wasn't a sword.
Ooh!
That is nice.
Ooh, baby.
So, but that was when he was very young. Maybe he changed his mind since then.
Or it reaffirmed it after he spent more time with the small folk. He's like, the kingdom's made up of the people.
It could be a poignant callback in a later Dunk and Egg story. But anyway, so now that the sword, we know the sword went to the wall. Is it safe to assume that it's down in Yieldy Cave?
I got to assume so. He was lost beyond the wall and arranging. Why is he going beyond the wall without Darksister?
I agree. Like, if I'm sent on arranging, I'm gonna bring my best sword.
Whenever I go on arranging, and this is just me, obviously, but whenever I go on arranging, I bring my best sword.
Nowadays, in the summer, whenever I leave the house, most of the time I bring an umbrella, and I assume that a sword is more necessary when dealing with the travails on the other side of the wall.
Do you name your umbrella? Does it have like a title?
I don't, but I think I should.
You should.
Yes, you should. Like, like the Rainbreaker or something.
I like that. Wait. What was it? In Thor
Stormbreaker.
Yeah, Stormbreaker. I just rewatched Infinity War last night, so
Yes, name it
Yes.
Stormbreaker.
There we go.
He does have his first hammer is an umbrella for a bit in Thor Ragnarok.
It is. This is all connecting. But yeah, I don't think there's any chance he gets lost beyond the wall and arranging without Dark Sister. Although you can question whether or not he actually was lost or if he got lost on purpose.
Yeah.
Like it could be a Cold Hands or a Benjamin Stark situation from the show where maybe they found him dying and then brought him in, but I think it's more likely that he went willingly considering his roots as a Blackwood and his magical powers. So
his roots. Ew.
Yeah, I agree. I imagine Bloodraven would have been like, "Oh yes, I'm going on arranging."
This is such a good Bloodraven voice. Yes, I'm going on arranging.
Raises eyebrows, coughs,
winks his one eye.
Yeah, exactly. Oh.
So if he took it with him, it's probably in the cave. Although there was an excellent suggestion that I think it was Hob. He's three-fingered Hob because he uses Dark Sister to chop meat.
Oh my god.
And he accidentally cut off a couple of fingers.
I love it.
I forget. That might have been Chloe on Twitter. I forget who said that, but it was really funny when I saw it.
That's hilarious, yeah.
But you're more likely to cut yourself with a dull knife than with a sharp one.
Ah, that's a good point.
I guess the real question we're kind of circling around is there any plot significance to this? Because George doesn't often answer questions about future things that matter, I guess. So if Dark Sister's going to play into anything, would he really confirm it's in play? Wouldn't it be better to have it as hidden?
He answers questions on two things that don't matter or things that he finds self-evident, like that aren't really a spoiler because like duh, in his mind, obviously. And I mean the Dark Sister thing, like, because it never turned up again, because no target, it's not mentioned after Bloodraven, it was a safe assumption for a long time that, yeah, Bloodraven took it with him. So I think this is a case of him going, well, yeah, of course he did, because he's Bloodraven, and that's his sword. Like, wouldn't you guys just assume it's in the cave with him?
No, some people think it's in the crypts of Winterfell, or it's Longclaw, or it's somewhere else weird.
But yeah, so that's kind of my take on it. Is not that it's not important, but just that the fact that it's at the wall, like that fact or in the cave, that fact by itself isn't what's important. Like that someone may use it, or like there may be something like that. But that, yeah, like sure, Dark Sister's there. Who gives a shit?
What do you think, Eliana? Do you think it's plot relevant, or do you agree with Michael?
Well, I haven't taken a stance, but yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of a middle ground of both. Like, I don't know that like Dark Sister's going to be like plot relevant in the sense that it's like, oh, this is Lightbringer. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not that. I think it's plot relevant in like, I can imagine like George describing Mira finding a sword, and like it's described like Dark Sister, it's not explicitly stated, and she helps defend Bran or something in the cave, and then somehow it also in my opinion, it obviously makes its way to Arya. Like, it's described in such a way that it's like, in my opinion, Dark Sister is so perfectly made for Arya.
Ooh, that's a great point, yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I don't see it like, in that way, I guess it's plot relevant. I don't see it plot relevant in like, it's Lightbringer.
Right.
Or it's Heartsbane, and it means something for who Sam is. It's more like, this is a cool thing I found in the video game, and I'm gonna use it from now on.
Right.
Look at this sweet drop that I got.
So if this was like in World of Warcraft, this wouldn't be like the sword you use to fight the dungeon. It'd be the one you keep in your vault because that's cool.
Well, no, you're gonna use it, but you're like, I'm so glad, like, I got this drop,
Yeah, it's a good drop, but it's not, I don't know, it's not a
That's what I mean.
Perk.
It's a good drop. You keep it, but it's not like the thing that's going to push you to the next level. I think I'm muddying my metaphor. Anyway. I think getting to Arya is probably the most likely future for it, if it has any future. Although I personally love the idea that Hodor is going to find it, because when he came out of the Winterfell crypts, he took the rusty sword, and he's been sort of like banging it off trees as they go north. So it's probably like really worn down and ineffectual. It would be extremely awesome if the simple Hodor pulled Dark Sister from nowhere as they're escaping.
I'm crying.
Actually, you could see this really emotional, like, hold the door sequence as Bran, like, you know, wargs into Hodor and is wielding Dark
He
Sister.
just grabs the sword, but he doesn't know
Well,
it.
maybe he knows it, maybe he doesn't. Yeah, whatever.
Well, Hodor would not know
Hodor
it's
would
Dark
not
Sister.
because his brain is a fried egg. But you know, like Bran is like in a tunnel surrounded by whites or whatever in Hodor's mind. You know, finally being a knight, and then Hodor dies, like holding the door there with the sword.
Though it would have some implications, assuming that the show's canon that Valyrian steel is dragon steel is true, which I'm still skeptical of, but...
Which part? That it kills whites?
The Valyrian steel is the dragon steel that defeats
Oh.
things. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I guess we haven't seen that in the books yet. Jon hasn't actually cut down anybody with Longclaw yet, so...
Yeah.
I guess you're right, that's not totally confirmed. I consider that canon at this point, but besides, I think that's one cool way that Dark Sister could be important. Getting to Arya somehow is another cool one. Mira picking it up. I like the idea that as, like, I assume we're going to get a similar scene where the cave is being stormed, and maybe Bloodraven goes, like, the sword, or something like that, and, like, points, or, like, puts it in Bran's mind where Dark Sister is, or something like that. Oh, yeah.
Like a little scavenger hunt.
Like, as they're coming. Like, obviously it's not going to go down the same way. Probably the broad strokes might be similar. The details will be off. But, I mean, I thought there's some pretty interesting ways, if he has it still in the cave, that it could be relevant, I guess. I
also want to shout out to Jones Tony in the thread, Jones Tony 710, who points out that, because some people were saying, like, oh, maybe Mira will grab it now that she's come up. And he points out, or Jones Tony points out, that Mira specifically says she's no good with a sword, better with a net and spear. And so it would be interesting if, like, she does end up with it out of necessity, out of, like, a survival thing. And, like, yeah, she's super clumsy, and it doesn't... maybe she makes 3-fingered hob, like 1-fingered hob, but, you know, like that someone who is not very good with a sword ends up with Dark Sister would be interesting. And maybe Bran does something awful, like trying to warg into Mira to use the sword or something. I mean, there's Bran's story could go so many ways.
It's not going to be a good way. I also want to quickly apologize to all the people who have very different ideas about where the sword is that we completely dismissed. We just went straight to it's in the cave. Sorry, guys.
I mean, I guess it could be at the wall, and then, like, I don't know what then. It's at the wall.
I mean, the quote is only, the question was, did he take it with him to the wall? It doesn't, I don't think that's explicitly, did it make it to Castle Black? Did it make it to all the way there? Did he leave it somewhere else? So I guess there's some wiggle room there if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Right. Like, oh, yeah, he took it with him, but then Dunk took it back to King's Landing. Well, we're going to move on from, a fairly exciting topic to possibly the most well-trod topic in the fandom, which is Stannis and Renly. But with a twist. But with a twist. Before you turn off the podcast, this is a twist.
I was about to leave the call.
I know, yeah. I could see you reaching for the end call button. This was a post created by user Benign Blather, titled Stannis, Renly, and Bruce, Bannockburn and the Battle That Could Have Been. Now, this is a long post, and it's a very dense post, and there's a lot to take in. So I will read sort of the quick summary of what Benign Blather is arguing here. The summary, the TLDR at the end of the post is, despite being dealt the weaker hand at the prospective Battle of Storm's End, Stannis had a plan for the engagement, which he felt gave him at least some chance of success, with or without divine assistance. This plan, paralleling the Scottish battle plan at Bannockburn, involved leading a smaller force of foot armed with long spears in offensive maneuvers against a larger force of cavalry, using flat terrain and natural obstacles to prevent both flanking and to impair their ability to retreat in good order. And for the record, for those who are not familiar with the Battle of Bannockburn, Robert the Bruce fought it and won against a much larger English force. The Scottish won that battle. And Benign Blather is basically saying Stannis equals Robert the Bruce, Renly equals the English. Simple as that. Very clean cut. So now, one of the things I wanted to discuss about this, because sometimes the military strategy posts can be a little dense, and this one was really good. Everyone should read it. But at the beginning, Benign Blather has some premises that they lay out, and if you don't buy these, the post doesn't work. And one of them in particular, I want to talk about a little bit, because their point 2 and 3. Is that one, Stannis is not at this point in the story possessed of a blind faith in everything Melisandre says, and that means he had a non-magical battle plan for Storm's End and felt like he could win.
I think his strategy was best available, not likely to succeed in his mind. Otherwise, I don't think he turns to Melisandre, because that's not really his way. He very much enjoys, like, taking people on and destroying them personally. Like, one of his great victories was smashing the Greyjoy fleet around Fair Isle, taking down probably the superior navy and the more experienced naval tacticians, and Stannis managed to smash them anyway. And it seemed like he really revels in that kind of thing, where I think the fact that he turned to Melisandre probably said that he really didn't think he had much of a chance. Or not enough that it was worth fighting.
I think that Stannis went and he was perhaps ready to fight, but I think he honestly thought that he was going to be like, Renly, bow to me, and that Renly was going to be like, okay.
That would be Stannis.
I do think, that's Stannis. He thinks that people are going to do that. He expects it of them.
Yeah, it's definitely, that is kind of where I think the discussion around this post gets really interesting. Because, it depends on whether or not you think Stannis was rolling into this basically being like, all right, Renly's never going to listen to me, but I have this magic drone that's going to take him out, so it doesn't matter what he says. Or was it, like you were saying, Eliana, like he's coming in going, okay, Renly's a dumbass, but he's going to listen to me, and he's going to follow in the end.
I don't know. He knows Renly. You can't expect Renly to be like, all right, well, I got the Tyrell army, but because you asked nicely. Like, he would have to really have no idea in his head of what Renly is like, or other people, to think that that's, like, a reasonable thing to happen.
That's what we know of Stannis, that he doesn't know what people are like.
Maybe.
Because, like, something that I like about this post that Benign Blather does is, like, at the end, not everyone, like, puts in counterpoints for their argument. And they show some of the weaknesses of this. And the third one there, which is part of why I thought of this, is that it says, Stannis couldn't have made this plan prior to investing in the siege. So that means Stannis must have already been down there and been, like, committed to, like, yeah, we're here. And I think that it's because Stannis is like, yeah, Renly's my younger brother, and the right thing, and obviously the thing that he ought to do, is to surrender to me and be like, yes, you are King Stannis. And I do think Stannis thought that Renly would do that. Or had, like, quite high hopes that that's what would happen.
I can't believe I'm going to say this. I think Stannis is probably smarter than that. He can't... He can't really think that would work. And if he does, he's like a bigger dumbass than I've ever thought he was before, I guess. But I don't know. But even like his plan of sieging up with a castle at his back against basically an empty garrison, that's not like a bad strategy. Like, that's basically what happened with the Dothraki and the Unsullied at that one city, where they basically just held their backs against the city while the cavalry came at them over and over again, and they won by using long spears and like missile weapons.
That's a good point. The battle of was that the Battle of Qohor or something?
Yeah.
Qohor. So
Qohor.
Like that's a reasonable strategy. Maybe Stannis knows about that, maybe he doesn't, but George does. So
right. George has his patterns he likes, sure. And it is. I do find this topic really interesting because it's like the what if that we were really close to in the story. So, and George usually has those really strong because it his twists feel like twists because the alternative feels very believable right up until it twists, right up until it changes. So the battle had to feel believable. There had to be background there. I can see the Bannockburn connection that Benign Blather's making, but yeah, a lot of it, so much of it depends on Stannis's mindset. This weird fucking guy.
This very weird guy.
I like this the Bannockburn parallel as a like headcanon. I'm gonna throw this out there, especially because every now and then we bring this up on the podcast of like, you know, George thumbing the scales, and like this happened because the plot wanted it to. Do you really think George had an alternate like plan for Stannis, or was he just like, this is fine? People aren't gonna think that much into this, which is what a normal person would think about their books.
Yeah.
I think he definitely knew the basics of Stannis' plan because Shakespeare of Thrones wrote an excellent essay comparing Stannis to Macbeth and how they basically line up 1-to-1, and that's sort of what's going on the whole way. So Stannis can't win since he's following that idea.
Right, but there's nothing in the play of Macbeth that indicates like that we as an audience know, or that Shakespeare had ideas of what Macbeth's alternate plans would be had his plans not gone awry.
Oh, I see what you mean. I meant on
a meta level. Like, I don't think that George like actually had a plan of like, yeah, this is what Stannis was gonna do. I think George always knew that his plot was going to go with like, oh, there's gonna be a shadow baby, so like, I don't know, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he like wrote himself to this battle and he's like, wait, I want Stannis to win. Shadow baby?
I mean, the Melisandre's magic, like, I think he was definitely building. He wanted that. And I agree, Eliana. I think that if it's anything, it's that George was so unconcerned with the actual battle, the quote unquote actual battle that never happened, that he was just like, whatever. Like, I guess it would have worked out or something, but Stannis isn't worrying about that, or we're not in Stannis's head, so we're not worrying about that. I don't know. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I it's definitely a headcanon, the Bannockburn connection,
and I like it.
I think that's
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
There is something interesting in the shadow baby part, though, that it's not until later that Stannis is like actively aware of what he did.
Right.
That he actually killed Renly. So that seems more like later on, he finally like kind of admits it. He's like, yeah, I guess I kind of did that. I do remember doing it. But at the time, it seems like it was mostly a Melisandre plan. Like maybe she knew that Stannis was screwed and that's why it happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No,
I agree. My own Stannis hate.
Well, I just think Stannis is, especially at the beginning of the series, a skeptic, a religious skeptic. And for obvious reasons, because everyone else is like this in Westeros, a magical skeptic. They're like, we haven't seen magic in a long time. And so he wouldn't necessarily think that Melisandre's magical. There's no reason to believe so until the shadow baby, which I'm also going to say I think that's kind of a product maybe of George's gardening, because we don't have foreshadowing of it in book 1. It was something I think he came up with and he was like, I like this idea.
Yeah, I think that's right. It really came out of nowhere in that book. It's not out of nowhere with the rest of his work, but it is out of nowhere in A Song of Ice and Fire.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this a while ago, I think, with Sam and magic in the series, but the shadow baby comes into the story at a point where I think George is trying to show us that after Dany's dragons hatch, things are different. Like, show it, magic is here now. Like, it is in the story. It is in this world.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why the shadow baby happens relatively early in the book. I mean, it's within the first half. And yeah, I don't know. It does kind of come out of nowhere. But maybe that's how magic should be.
I think that's why it works so well. Many people think that Game of Thrones for a while is just a political drama with weird ice things that don't really understand, and sometimes dragons, and that's just like a slow escalation up.
Also,
Yeah.
I really like the name Robert or the Bruce. I like the idea of being your title being the Bruce.
The Bruce. Yeah.
Oh,
He is
Isn't that
it's a
fun?
title.
the
Or
Bruce.
I
It's
think,
interesting.
or it's I don't know what it is.
Or is it like the Ned though?
But his name's Robert the Bruce.
But Ned's name is Ned, but the Northerners call the Klansmen call him the Ned.
Yeah, or it's like how I guess in some of the other Romance languages, like someone's name is like I don't know something De La Cruz, like of the cross, right? Or so.
Yeah, he is. I think he was like Robert Lord of Robert D. Bruce, like Brus, which is a city or so. It's a title. I don't fucking remember,
I
but
don't know.
yeah, like you know, Robert the Bruce is because of like a French Norman name or something. I don't know, whatever. It all gets so complicated with all these stupid names. It does make me think of that Monty Python skit though. That Australian Philosophers College skit where everybody is named Bruce in Australia. Every single person. G'day, Bruce. Hello, Bruce. How are you, Bruce?
This is the episode we need Sam for. He can provide context to this joke.
He totally can.
Ah! Sam!
Oh, okay, here we go. Yeah, Clan Bruce is a Scottish clan from Kincardine in Scotland. There we go.
So he's the Bruce, like, and saying like you're the Lannister,
Yes,
or
exactly.
the Stark.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean that was a big thing in yeah, like that Scottish titles worked like that. Like you would be the Mackenzie or the I don't know, McDonald's.
Rob is called the Stark in Winterfell at some point, I think.
Yeah.
So that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I feel like the Ned is kind of it feels like that.
it's that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the Ned. He's the Bruce.
Do you think that he introduced himself as Ned and they don't know he's the Lord of Winterfell?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, it's Ned.
Hey, my name's Ned, guys. Do you think
Oh yeah, what's going on? Let's have a party.
Ned said he had like Robert's the one with the battlefield voice, right? Ned has like a soft voice, right? I think that's canon.
I can only think of Sean Bean, so
Ugh. Okay, so Matt, do you have any other subreddit highlights you'd like to pass on to us?
I do. There was a very, very good post by our friend on Twitter, Natalie or Paparotti. I think this was one of her first Reddit posts, and it was an exceptional one. There's a lot of discussion in the fandom about what's in Lyanna's tomb, if anything. A lot of people think it will be like a crown or a sword or a dragon egg or a marital, what's it called? A bridal cloak to tell Jon that he's actually a Targaryen. And what Natalie did in an exceptional way is she broke down the implausibility of a lot of those things. Specifically, how could Ned bring those back from Dorne with him? Because a lot of those things are bulky, or they would stand out. Somebody would see them. It's like, hey, what are you doing with a dragon egg? Or that appears to be a crown, Ned Stark. What's going on?
Or the harp,
there?
specifically.
Or the harp. Like, Ned, you don't play harp. That's really big. What are you doing lugging that thing around? You can't ship it. There's no UPS. He has to carry it. So her suggestion is that what he brought back was a signet ring, a Targaryen signet ring. Signet.
That's a hard one.
Targaryen signet ring. And this is something that comes from Duncan Egg, that when Egg ever wanted to prove his identity, he would take out his father's ring from his boot with the 4 Targaryen dragons on it, and then people would know, oh, you're a Targaryen prince, oh crap. And something like that could be easily smuggled back to Winterfell. Nobody has this but Targaryen princes, and it would be extremely identifiable. So I think this was a really excellent and logical way of looking at this really big fandom question that has been going on probably for decades at this point, if there's anything in Lyanna's tomb for Jon.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great post. It's super well written, and I think builds very naturally to its conclusion, which is it's nice. It's nice to read something like that. And what I thought was fun about it was the idea that it doesn't have to be true, but the idea that it could be Egg's signet ring found from the ruins of Summerhall. Like Rhaegar used to hang out at Summerhall. Maybe he found the ring. Maybe it was, maybe it was passed on, or but it could be that same ring passed down from one good egg to another. from one Aegon to another because Jon's name is Aegon.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Aegon?
Nothing much, Aegon.
So, Aegon, what do you think about this?
I like it. For the same reasons that Aegon just said.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I meant the other Aegon.
Oh, my
No.
bad.
Other Aegon.
My
he
bad.
doesn't.
No, go ahead, Aegon.
Yeah, what Aegon was just saying about how, like, Rhaegar, as we know, was very fixated on the tragedy at Summerhall. It was this presence that loomed large over his life, and of course was started by Aegon. And I think that makes sense. I think a question that I would have, like, I think there are some great points here about George obviously being very influenced by other stories about rings.
Mm-hmm. And lords.
And of course we do see it with Bloodraven being kind of introduced in the Mystery Knight, but I am always a little skeptical about, like, the evidence for something lying extra-textually from the main book series.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's my biggest problem with any of these ideas is that there's not much, like, a lot of this is sort of picking through small details in history and, like, weird facts and being like, well, that must be there because that solves this problem. That doesn't, just because the problem exists doesn't mean there's, in your mind, mean there's going to be a solution. Like, this is an excellent attempt at finding something that fits the thing. How will Jon ever find out he's a Targaryen? But he might never. This, like, George could never have that in mind.
Going to. Because this is a spoilers extended podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I very much think that he's going to, because you know how there's that So Speak Martin where, and it's in brackets, which means that it's paraphrased, that asks, will we, as in, like, the reader, will the reader ever learn of Jon's true parentage? And the answer that George has that's listed on that So Speak Martin is eventually yes, but that comes, this is a paraphrased version of a question that was asked in the Barnes & Noble Q&A forums, like, in 2000, I want to say it was 2008. I can link it from Wayback Machine. And it used to actually be very easily accessible in public, but I think it's just because Barnes & Noble didn't want to host forums anymore, because
why would you?
why would they be, like, they're suffering cost stuff because people are buying books on the internet now and on Kindle. So they're like, we can't host all these. Anyways, I don't think it was anything necessarily malicious of, like, George wanted to hide this. I think it was, like, literally, like, the company has to cut costs somewhere. And the question actually asks, will Jon ever learn of his parentage? And the answer is eventually yes.
Right.
Huh.
That's the actual phrasing of it, of that question.
Wow.
Okay, I'm gonna amend what I said then. Will Jon find out in this way? Maybe. Like
you mean with physical proof is what you mean.
Like, will Lyanna's tomb open, he walks into it, and there's something there that says, Jon, you're a Targaryen. Maybe it's Lyanna. She gets up, she goes, my son, you're Rhaegar's child. Like, or will she be, like, her skeleton sitting there, like, cradling a dragon egg or something like that? Like, he can find out in other ways. It doesn't have to be this. This is a very popular fandom thing, and this is an excellent answer to that question, but it doesn't mean that's how it's going to go, you know?
I think my other hesitation about finding an artifact or something in the crypt is, like, alright, let's say you're roaming in someone's casket for whatever reason, right? And you're about to grave rob someone, but not really, because they're your family and you're just looking for, I don't know, whatever clues.
Swords, because you're hiding from the Greyjoys down there.
Sure, yeah, exactly. I feel like if I saw someone with, like, if I saw my aunt and I didn't know she was my mom yet, right? Even if I saw my mom there and I saw her with, like, this random Targaryen thing, I'd be like, this is weird.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I'm not gonna be like, yo, that's my dad!
Right.
Like, is it gonna be written on the back of the thing? Jon, you're a Targaryen. Love, Ned.
You're a wizard, Harry!
I'm sorry I never told you. You're not my son.
I'm a what?
BT dubs, this is your mom.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I think even Natalie's excellent idea here, I don't even think a signet ring would really tell Jon that he's a Targaryen. Like, maybe he could put that together if he talks to Sam about it and, like, he has someone else to reflect on. But that's, like, such a big leap to make. He barely knows anything about it.
But, okay, I need to jump in here because she's not saying that it is the proof. She's saying that it provides a symbol of identity, status, and power for Jon. That having a physical emblem connecting him to the Targaryens is something that he can then walk around and be like, hey, follow me because I'm the damn king, bitch. That it's it would hold for him the same power that it holds for Egg, which is kind of that get out of jail free card, or that he would try to use it for that. That it's not necessarily the proof.
Okay,
it's
I think
part
that's
of
fair.
it. I want to be fair to the essay because I don't think she's claiming that it is the sole proof.
Okay.
Although people out there do claim that a token could be the sole proof.
That's a good point. I think that's well taken. It's a good point.
So just to make sure I understand this, what the essay is saying then is after he finds out a Targaryen, he finds the signet ring and then he wears it and then he's like, look, I have the ring, therefore I am who I say I am. I
mean, I think so. She's not super specific about it, so I think that's up to us to discuss. But her, like, I'll quote it so people who are listening can sort of get what she's saying. But she says, Gurm established within the Dunk and Egg stories that the Targaryen family used rings as an unquestionable symbol of identity, status, and power. What does Jon lack? Identity, status, power. How on earth is he going to raise Westeros to defeat a massive tide of death in his current state? He needs some sort of magic token. So that the ring itself is, like the way Egg uses it, a way to make people listen and make people pay attention to you.
Listen! And I do like... I like that parallel, the idea of Jon using it in the same way that Egg uses it.
Carries around in his boot. Jon just like, he's going up to somebody to treat them. They're like, who are you? He's like, hang on a second. Hang on. Let me get my boot off.
Yep.
Yeah, but being able to bust it out, like, I think makes sense to me. I think I'm just hung up on the idea of it being introduced extra-textually. And that's, I think, my one biggest hang-up. As we were discussing with Matt, like, I think using it, I think it's as you say, and as Natalie, I guess, puts it, of, like, it's used to be a symbol. And I think that is a big part, and will be an even bigger part in the stories to come, if, with that story around who has whose crown, like, there are theories that Aegon's crown is in Dorne, and what, does that mean that Aegon, the quote-unquote sixth, or aka Fagon, might come in with that, or if he comes in with the Blackfire sword? Like, these trappings of power, these symbols of power are important to weaving that political narrative, and that could be the case with this ring. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. And of course, what would be really interesting there is that Dany has the ultimate symbol of Targaryen power. Like, Jon might have a ring and Aegon might have a crown, but she has the motherfucking dragons to take full advantage of our new dirty podcast.
I've already been cursing this whole time.
I love it. It's great. Yeah.
The motherfucking dragons. I'm also just gonna...
Why are you waving around a lighter? I feel like our listeners need to...
That's his dragon. That's his dragon right there.
Dragon. Hang on, dragon fire.
Dracarys!
Oh my god! Oh, Matt!
I did it.
The last thing he said was, oh, that's so sad.
Oh my god.
I just said, oh, and I went out like Quentin. I think I really do love this theory, and I know I'm saying, like...
We just need to have a Thunderdome, okay?
But okay, this is what I'm going to say. I don't think there's any reference to Rhaegar ever wearing a ring anywhere. I certainly don't remember one. Maybe she found a quote and I overlooked it, because apparently I overlooked parts of this post, but it's like Rhaegar, like, he's known for the rubies and his black armor. He's not really known for wearing a ring. If that had been a thing that had been brought up a lot more, I would be more inclined to believe this kind of thing.
It's true, yeah. And actually, if you do, like, a search of Ice and Fire and you look in the main series books for the phrase signet ring, never shows up. Literally never. So
it's really cool.
Maybe
really cool.
Maybe it's a big fat maybe it's a big fat ruby on a ring. I mean, like, maybe there's some, but yeah, I agree. Like, I love this post, and I just love the ideas in it. And there's a lot to sort of debate and engage with about it, but I think that's what makes it really interesting. And those are the best posts. Let's be real; those are the hottest topics. Where it makes us talk for 20 minutes about Targaryen rings.
I'm also gonna make one last assertion that perhaps Rhaegar and George are both fans of the song Single Ladies by Beyonce. And that if Rhaegar liked it, then he should have put a ring on it. And he did.
He really should have if he didn't. But yeah, I mean, yeah.
I mean, presumably if he had a ring to give, he would have left it with Elia when he said peace and ran off with the 15-year-old.
Well, he didn't like it, and
Classic
so he didn't
Rhaegar.
put a ring on it, okay?
He put a bridal cloak on it. That's not part of the song. No.
Yeah, that's the Westeros cut.
If you love it, put a bridal cloak on it.
So, Eliana, do you have any more offerings for the podcast gods today?
Yes, today's blood sacrifice. The second one. You know, first was the leech named Joffrey. I don't know, whatever. And this is by Bale Bard, whom I guess we've talked about a few times on this podcast already. And the post is called A Theory About a Certain Smuggler's TWOW Storyline. And I'm going to read aloud the TLDR and then elaborate a little, but the TLDR is, Skagos isn't as dangerous and cannibalistic as we are led to believe. It's a relatively safe place. Rickon and Osha won't leave it freely, so Davos will have to either kidnap the boy or abort his mission. He will do the latter. After that, his story will take him to Hardhome. So the essence of it is the idea that being told that Skagos is a cannibalistic island seems like a thing that is very dangerous and that George wouldn't have revealed beforehand and would have maybe saved instead as like a surprise reveal, and therefore it's not actually cannibalistic and that it's just a misinterpretation of some of the old gods, the traditions of those who follow the religion of the old gods, and that instead Rickon and Osha have been having a grand time on Skagos and therefore are like, no, we want to stay here, and Davos is like, well, I'm not about to kidnap them and do that because he's not about forcing kids to do things like how he didn't want to force Edric Storm to die. I mean, and instead will choose to, in some ways, resume his smugglery ways, but for good, like for the benefit of people, by going to Hardhome, and there he'll encounter starving free folk who are, in fact, forced to practice cannibalism. And this is how Rickon's story becomes a shaggy dog. Yeah,
so, I mean, it's a really interesting post, I think, because people have basically just assumed, right? I think we all do, that Davos is just going to Skagos. That's what he's doing next. There hasn't been much debate about that. But whether or not it would have a point and what he would do at Skagos, that's a little more up for debate. And you know, this idea that he would refuse to sacrifice Rickon, I like that idea, especially since we've gotten the refrain in Starting in A Feast for Crows with, to crown him or her is to kill him or her. And the idea being that, you know, like, to crown Myrcella was to kill her, or, well, not kill, but maim her. And that Davos might see that potential in Rickon.
Yeah, gold will be their crowns, gold will be their shrouds. So yeah, I mean, that is an idea that's put together.
Yeah, yeah. So I could definitely see. And on the other end of the post, with going to Hardhome and saving the wildlings, a lot has been made of like the Elephant and the Goldheart, which are the ships that picked up wildlings from Hardhome and some like sold them into slavery, or one of them was wrecked in Braavos and held there because slavery is bad. But like that plot kept popping up in Arya's chapters. The whereabouts of these ships are noted. So it would be kind of an interesting resolution to that, to have our resident smuggler head to Hardhome to save people.
I question how would Davos know to head to Hardhome, because the people who know about Hardhome being a place of interest are primarily on the wall, and you said it's hinted at in Arya chapters, but if Davos is on the sea and therefore doesn't have a mailing address, and then he's going to Skagos, how is he going to find out about Hardhome?
It seems like a tough place to want to go to, even from Skagos. Like, even if you discover Skagos is actually okay, we're full of unicorns and laughing Rickon and everyone's having a great time, it's like, Hardhome is definitely portrayed as a not cool place to go. So, like, yeah, what why is Davos going like, I mean, I can't get Rickon, but I'm going to go to the worst place I know, just a little bit to the northwest.
Right, there has to be a draw to get him in there. Yeah, yeah, exactly. No one's going to fax him. Be like, did it, we need assistance.
What if he looks in the flames?
I guess
he finally does.
There's that. It's possible that a ship coming from Hardhome could crash onto Skagos.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Skagos is one of the few places left in the north that still actively, like really actively goes after the old god worship. And Rickon is, he's a child, but he's displayed as being very in tune with his warging side. So it's possible that Davos goes there and maybe he talks to like another Ghost of High Heart figure or some sort of wise person, and they give him a mission or something like that, and the old gods pop up there. Him being a warg and going to Skagos, I think it's undersold how important that will be for the Skagosi. Like, that's a gift of the old gods.
Yeah. They've
been mostly run out of the north, and they go go beyond the wall, but beyond the wall, they're pretty much seen as, like, not Varamir because he's a terrible person, but they're seen as valuable and important members of society. Even though sometimes they are cast out, but like it's very different. Somebody that actually follows old god worship would see Rickon as something special.
I think it depends on the tribe, because I think even Varamir, before he turned out to be an awful person, right? They found out that he was a skin changer, and they're like, no.
Well, it was because he killed his brother.
Yeah, fair. I mean, he sucks.
That is no bueno. I mean,
he sucks.
Just don't do that. But him being on Skagos, being a Stark who's a skin changer, is a powerful symbol, and there's a lot of ways for magic to show up there in ways that maybe directs Davos. That could happen.
I also want to call out this thing that Baelbard says in a post that he links in the bottom that he had written about before, of that he thinks that the idea of cannibalism on Skagos is either null or exaggerated. I want to say that I personally think that it's exaggerated, just because this is a thought that I have. I don't think that it's necessarily untrue that the Skagosi are cannibals. I think that what has happened is that because we, as modern people, aren't very familiar with cannibalism, for obvious reasons.
Right.
Yeah, right. We're not familiar.
I have never eaten most of somebody. I mean, that's, yeah.
Yeah. For obvious reasons.
Go on.
That there's been set up this, like, in my opinion, false dichotomy between, like, you don't eat people or you're a terrible person who hunts down people to eat them, right? Whereas there are cultures where they don't hunt down people to eat them, but, like, for example, like the Foray people in Papua New Guinea, they would eat their dead only after their dead had died, but not like actively killing them, because it was part of their religion of wanting to keep that person with them. And I could see this being a tradition amongst those who might worship the old gods, or some like variation of that tradition, right? Like, I could see it being a peaceful thing that means a lot to them, especially because, and I think that Baelbard hits this, or like checks off this box in some ways by saying that Hardhome might be full of cannibalism, or that more violent kind of cannibalism, as opposed to this peaceful kind that I'm asserting exists on Skagos. But it's a theme or like motif or idea that is definitely coming to the forefront of the story, especially within the Winds of Winter.
Yeah, especially in the north with Bran, and yeah, I mean, this is... Yeah, the cannibalism element. I really like the idea that, and I think George would do this, make it more complicated than like your sort of early 20th century Savages in the Jungle type portrayal of cannibalism. That it could be a religious practice or something like that.
Well, to add on to that, we're told while Davos is actually in White Harbor that the way that the First Man used to honor the old gods, well, first they would cut throats like we see in the vision from Bran, but the other way is they would take out people's organs and throw them on the tree. So that I could see that easily being misconstrued. Like, let's say you come across somebody being like butchered up like an animal.
Mm-hmm.
When you might think they're going to eat the person, when in fact they're going to throw their entrails on the tree as part of a religious practice.
Right.
I think Eliana makes a good point that it's probably just gross out, and it's probably not actually cannibalism, which is the point that Baelbard makes. What they're doing is probably not.
No, I'm
great.
saying that they're actually cannibals. They're just doing it in part of a religious practice.
So I want to throw something out there because I've been ruminating on these ships, the Elephant and the Goodheart. And by ruminating, I mean looking around the wiki. And so the Goodheart ends up at Braavos, and they have wildling slaves from Hardhome. These are the two ships which are driven north by a storm. They end up dropping anchor off Hardhome to make repairs. They see thousands of wildlings that have been led there by Mother Mole after the battle beneath the wall. The desperate wildlings get on the ships. They are promptly taken as slaves, chained up, and they set out to sea. A storm parts Elephant from the Goodheart, one ship from the other. The Goodheart ends up in Braavos and is held there because slavery is no bueno. The Elephant, its whereabouts are unknown. Arya tells the kindly man, as part of her, reporting on things in Braavos, she's like, yes, the Elephant may have made it back to Lys with a cargo of slaves. However, George has done this thing a couple times now, and most prominently with Aeron Greyjoy, where he has multiple characters speculate on the whereabouts of someone or something, and then none of them are right, because it's this crazy bullshit that he made up. And with Aeron, it was being taken prisoner by Euron Greyjoy, personally, and held in his ship. With the Elephant, it could be that the Elephant and its crew of, recently expatriated Hardhomites, crashed on Skagos. Because we have a few other galleys that left from Eastwatch by the Sea that crashed on Skagos from Salador San's flotilla. And so maybe when Davos gets there, he finds the Skagosi, doing a high council on what to do with this wildling problem at Hardhome, or something like that. So in terms of a hook, I think it's possible that it's already there. The ship Elephant. That it could have crashed on Skagos and left these Hardhome refugees there who could pass on the word about Hardhome and say, hey, how about instead of abducting this child, you go help out a bunch of people?
I think that's a really interesting thing, too, if you pointed out that was Salador San's ship, and Salador San and Davos, if I'm not mistaken, are familiar with one another and friends, correct? They're close, and therefore either Salador San might be on the ship or he might not, but even if not, Davos knows his ships, in my assumption maybe, and he'd be like, oh, I know this ship. Be like, that's Salador San's ship. And
yeah,
that would create more of an emotional pull for him, more of an emotional tie for him to go to Hardhome that isn't just, I should go there. It's suddenly oh, my bro was trying to do this.
Right, yeah.
Because he hasn't met Jon yet.
That's true. Davos has not met Jon, yeah. Also, I do want to clarify, the Goodheart and the Elephant aren't Salador's ships. They're just two randos. But they are also from Lys, Salador San is. So, I mean, the likelihood is good that there's still some sort of connection to Davos and the smugglers. They all know each other. They go to the networking events,
I misinterpreted what you said.
Yeah, sorry. I was talking about some other galleys that had crashed on Skagos that did belong to Salador San. There's a lot of ships that, there's a lot of ships. A lot of bullships.
I really don't have a feeling for where Davos' story is going in the books. This is an interesting possibility, this post, but after he gets to Skagos, I really have no idea what's going to happen. I don't know if that's probably on purpose from George. It's just it's this big void in the rest of the story about where is he taking this guy? I assume he's going to end up with Jon or back at Winterfell somehow, but how he accomplishes that is just something I really struggle to wrap my head around any solid ideas.
An inflammatory question.
It's
not that inflammatory, but mildly.
Oh, okay.
So how in the show they killed off Doran, Martell, and Arya Hota because they liked Indira Varma so much and felt that Ellaria Sand was popular, I guess, during the season that she was there with Oberyn Martell, and thus played up her role and made her a bigger deal. Do you think that Davos is that important? Anne/Roar meets up with Jon. Anne/Roar plays that role for Jon at all in the books, or is it just something that we feel happens that way because it's happened in the show and it's more of just that Davos was a very popular character?
Huh. So I guess that's really basically a question: is Davos in the books tied to Stannis' fate?
Endgame?
In the show he's not. They've separated. Stannis is dead. Davos keeps going. But is he going to be like a Jaime Cersei thing when Stannis leaves the story, will Davos go with him somehow?
Yeah, that, and like how crucial to the overall story. How crucial to the overall story is Davos? And he must be mostly crucial in that he's the heart of the whole like Shireen thing. But for everything else.
Yeah, no, that's a fair question because
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I like Liam Cunningham in the show and all that, the show could have killed him off. And I'm sure they kept him around because he's awesome. But yeah, in the books, if you're looking to trim the fat a little bit, Davos could certainly go out before the end game. Whether that's with Stannis or whatever, that's yeah. I mean, I will say, like, I really like the idea that Bael Bard suggests about Davos being our point of view for what happens at Hardhome, but maybe that's Davos's last chapter. Like, maybe Davos dies, not necessarily, but you know, maybe his end game is sailing to save, as Bael Bard points out in the post, A Storm's End point 2. He's sailing to save trapped and starving people from death, and then it all goes horribly wrong because the White Walkers invade.
I like that idea, though, that it is
Storm's End 2.0,
which is also what Bael Bard calls it.
No, it's part deux.
Part deux. Yeah, no, that is what Bael Bard also calls it. But
the interesting thing is what you're describing with how Liam Cunningham maybe have stuck around longer because the showrunners like him. That's largely what happened with Davos as a character in the books, too. He wasn't originally a POV character.
Oh, yeah.
He only shows up because he didn't want to give Stannis a POV, but he needed someone there. And then as George found that he liked the character more, he increased his role and kept giving him more stuff to see. So, I mean, it could be a similar thing where there was no plan for him to make it to the end, but perhaps George enjoys the character so much in the same way it seems like he enjoys Samwell, that maybe both of them make it as like the relatively common characters rather than the heroic ones.
George obviously has changed some things in his storyline. It wouldn't be surprising if that is the case, and it was the case by the time he talked to David and Dan.
Well, and so, I mean, the interesting thing about Davos at this point is that it's fairly contrived that Davos has been separated from Stannis here, right?
Yeah.
Like him, book 5 opens up and you're like, oh, I guess Davos isn't with Stannis. He's actually down there. And clearly George wanted them separated for some reason. Why? To make it so that Stannis can die and Davos can live? The other way around? Like, I don't know.
I always kind of envisioned Stannis as Davos as the good angel on his shoulder and Melisandre as the devil on his shoulder. So he took away the angel.
Yeah.
So now he's only listening to the person that's going to lead him down a very dark path. I think one important thing is I think most people assume Shireen's probably going to burn or die in some way in a sacrifice for Stannis, whether he does it himself or Melisandre or somebody else does it. But that kind of thing really doesn't have impact unless there's somebody there or somebody to learn about it that really cares about Shireen, and nobody cares about Shireen more than Davos. So I think at the very least, he at least makes it that far to see Shireen die. He probably makes it back from Skagos. I'm not sure how much further past that he maybe makes it.
I don't think he sees Shireen die, but I think he sees like the aftermath or whatever.
Yeah, or he learns about it. Somebody has to learn about it that cares.
And Bael Bard's asserting that like it happens because Davos was like doing this like Hardhome thing, and therefore like he's not there when all the Shireen stuff goes down to prevent it.
Right.
Yeah. Not to say that like characters like Jon or other character or Asha won't care, but like Davos is like, she's basically his surrogate daughter.
Right.
So
right. Yeah.
The stakes there are so high that from a storytelling perspective, it would be a waste to kill Shireen in a way that a character doesn't feel tortured about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed. He's the POV through which we see the impact. And also, and to add on to that, if it is Stannis who does it, or at least at his behest, Davos has been the lens through which we see and very much judge Stannis, and the lens through which we see a lot of what people see as the goodness in Stannis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for Davos to be the one to condemn Stannis' actions is, I think, an important framing.
Yeah. That's a good point.
He is Stannis' literal biggest fan.
Well, and not just his biggest fan, but like his compass as well.
He loves him.
And so to have Davos be the camera, it would be like if suddenly the rose-colored glasses like just popped off, right?
I wonder if that's the problem with the show, is that you're seeing Stannis objectively, or not. You're not seeing it from Davos. Okay, let me rephrase that. In the show, you're not seeing Stannis through Davos's eyes of a character who clearly respects and cares for Stannis. You're seeing it from the perspective of a camera. So there's no interpretation about what Stannis is doing for you, the reader, like there is on the TV show, like there is in the books. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What we're seeing
it matters that Stannis likes him when he's observing.
We're seeing it through the point of view of David Benioff and DB Weiss.
Yeah. We're seeing it through the biased take of Davos versus the camera of HBO.
Our unreliable narrators of D&D.
Aren't they, though? Dude, okay, hold on. Shout out to Eden and his tweet and that, and I just want to remind him again, as I did last time and when he tweeted that, remember us when you're famous, Eden.
Also, Stannis lovers, don't at me on Twitter. Like, I don't need that. Stay out of my timeline.
He loves Stannis, really, deep down. The more you talk to him about Stannis, the more he loves it, guys.
Who?
Matt.
Oh.
You mean Aegon?
Oh, yeah, sorry, Aegon?
Aegon. He loves Stannis. Well, I think that should suffice for our offerings to the gods of podcasts for this month. So as we wrap up here, we want to remind you guys that we're changing the format and the editing a little bit. You should see another episode posted about a month after this one. You might say sort of on a pseudo-monthly basis. But if we were to rename the podcast, we would probably call it something like Maester Monthly, because that's about the time we're going to release them on.
Makes sense. I mean, yeah, that works.
Yeah, so roughly monthly, I think, is when you'll be seeing these episodes. No, but so it's been a while. So in case you forgot, here's where you can find us. We are on iTunes. We are on Google Play. We are on
We actually
Podbean.
are on Podbean.
We are on Podbean.
We are on iTunes. We are on Google Play. We are on Podbean. We are always on YouTube. You can find our page on Facebook as well. You can find us on Twitter at Maester Monthly. And of course, you can always find us on the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit, reddit.com/r/ASOIAF.
You can also find us on Stitcher and not on Acast.
There's just so many.
You can find us anywhere podcasts are sold.
Except for Spotify.
Just put Maester Monthly in Google and hit go.
Right.
I'm feeling lucky, and you'll find us.
Go to your Google Home. Actually, this does work, doesn't it? This was set up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it Alexa or is it Google Home?
Alexa, I think.
What?
You can go to Alexa and you can say, Alexa, play Maester Monthly. And Alexa will play Maester Monthly. You could have a Maester Monthly surprise Maester Monthly party with all your friends where you just shout that and everyone starts listening to Maester Monthly. It's the new Alexa play Despacito, I think.
It's the new Red Wedding.
Yeah, everyone hears our intro song and they're like, oh no, it's the Rains of Castamere.
That'd be a bad thing to play at a party out of nowhere.
Everyone's enjoying themselves and then like, hello and welcome to Maester Monthly.
Michael, bookshelf stud.
Yeah.
What's he doing
That's
here?
right. Invite me to your parties, is what I'm saying. I will do the intro to Maester Monthly live at your party, like a clown. As for each of us individually, you can find me on Twitter at bookshelfstud, also on Reddit at that username. I have a blog, offmichaelsbookshelf.wordpress.com, where I post about quarterly, I think, at this point. I've got a big post coming up on John Mayer and Aswaf, so hold on to your butts because that's going to be so fun. I also, for a while, did a podcast called Fantastic Transmissions, which you can find on major podcasting sites. Haven't done it in a bit because I've been busy, but if I get back into it, you'll hear about it. You
can find me, I have a YouTube channel now at youtube.com/JoeMagician where I upload theories and then do live streams afterwards talking about them, featuring people in the fandom. Like I've had on Lucifer Means Lightbringer, Sanrixian, Bookshelf Stud was on there once. Had that guy.
That's right. What a good get.
Wait, what the hell? How come you even invited me?
I literally have. You turned me down.
Okay, invite me again. Invite me again at some point.
But anyway, so you can find me on that. I'm also going to be uploading all my videos and streams as a podcast format soon, so you can check that out. Also on Watchers on the Wall, where I'm a feature writer, where I swear I'm going to start writing articles again. Look for those. I haven't been for a while. I've been pretty busy. But that's going to start happening again. And also on Twitter at JoeMagician42, at my blog, clankingdragon.wordpress.com, and actually on Instagram.
Oh, are you plugging your Insta?
What a boy.
I am. Just because of the name, because the name's awesome. The name is Matt Wrote This. It was suggested by Joanna Robinson because her name on Twitter is Joe Wrote This, and I wanted to make mine Joe. And she's like, no, just make it Matt. So I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. So that's what it is. I don't do anything interesting there. I just think it's a funny joke. Anyway, check it out.
None of you deserve my Insta.
No one gets to know.
It's all cooking stuff.
It is. You should come down here again. Both of you should come here and try my food.
Yeah.
Well, that's easier for one of us.
We'll do a live Maester
I'll cook for you if you come here.
Okay.
I'm not joking. Tell me ahead of time.
Well,
don't just show up.
Don't just show up and be like, welcome to Maester Monthly, your favorite pseudo-monthly
with a
podcast.
microphone out.
Yeah, that's what I say when I walk into rooms now. Hello, welcome to Maester Monthly.
And hi, goodbye, everyone. I'm Eliana, aka Glass Table Girl, on the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit. You can also find me on the Girls Gone Canon podcast and on Twitter as Arithmetric, where I talk about tomatoes.
Accurate.
Amazing. That was so concise. Well, as always, thank you guys for listening. Thank you to everyone on Reddit who created those great posts. Thank you to George R.R. Martin for continuing to write the books.
And thank you to all of you users for making this awesome content for us to talk about.
Absolutely. We will see you.
Wait, Michael, they have to smash something.
Oh, that's right. I almost forgot.
Smash it and bang it.
How could you?
When you find us on Facebook and Twitter, you have a task. You have one purpose in life, and that God-given purpose is to, and I apologize to everyone in my apartment building, smash that motherfucking like button. Now I can actually say it.
Also, leave us an iTunes review, and we'll read them.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we love the iTunes reviews. In fact, we should gather some together to read next time.
We should. Also, they help people find us. That'd be pretty swell if you did that.
Yes, tell your friends, smash the MF and like button. Leave us a good comment or a review. We would really appreciate it. So thank you all for listening, and we will catch you next time.